So to speak, I say language is very strange. The sentence, language is very strange, contains everything I want to read to you about. I will talk about language and art, about language and the arts, painting, sculpture, dance, theater, music, poetry, whatever you may consider art, or rather, what I consider art. How would I know what you consider art? I will not speak the truth. The sentence, I will not speak the truth, equals language is very strange, in that it holds all aspects of what I will speak about. I will not speak the truth, but I will not lie either, because what I will tell you cannot fall into the categories of true or false. But I really mean it. I really mean it is yet another strange sentence. Why should I say something I don't mean? What changes when I emphasize, I really mean it? To be honest, I'm lying to you. Why should you be concerned about truth anyhow? Why would you want me to be truthful? So you don't have a disadvantage from taking my lies as truth? So you don't do something dangerous based on accepting my lies as truth? Why don't you like to be lied to? I'm reading words aloud. You see my facial expression, you hear the intonation of my voice, you note my accent. You may not be able to determine if I'm honestly lying to you, because you may not be able to grasp the coloration of my voice and the cadence of my sentences, since English is not my mother tongue, or because I'm just an honest liar. How do you decide if I speak the truth or if I'm lying? Or is there something other than truth? Does trust rest on truth? I would like to talk to you about how I see the relationship of art and language. These are thoughts which don't try to be true or right, but which have accompanied me for a long time. I hope that some of what I say may ring true for you. And I very much hope, and I'm certain, you will remember in which points you disagree. Language is very strange. Life is strange. I do understand the words, I do not understand the meaning. I'm living, and it feels I do not comprehend life. The difference between what I think, what I feel, what I perceive, what I say, what I do, what I'm afraid of. But wait, why can I say I'm afraid of something? Why can I be afraid of being afraid of something? Why can I be afraid of things I don't know I'm afraid of? There's so much in life which I cannot put in words. Either because I do not find the right words to be convinced myself that I say what I want to say, or because I would not dare to put something in words I feel deep down inside myself. I would be ashamed. Or I would endanger myself by voicing my thoughts. Or I cannot say it because I don't know what I don't know until I know it. In English, we call a person who cannot speak dumb. In German, we call a person who cannot speak stumm, mute, silent. We also have a German relative to dumb, dumm, which would be translated into English as stupid. So the English word dumb joins mute, incapable to speak, with being stupid. Imagine we live in a society without writing. You meet a person who is deaf and dumb, who cannot hear and cannot speak. How would you know if this person thinks? Maybe not in our language, but in a foreign language, which we have no idea of. One day, this person draws the outline of a deer with antlers in the sand. And you say, "Oh, you saw a deer." You look the other person in the eyes, and your face and body convey an inclined, kind, understanding sentiment. Maybe you're able to be nice without feeling sorry for the other person. The deaf and dumb person sees your mouth move while it shapes the words. And the deaf person agrees by moving the head up and down, up and down. Then she moves her hand with an extended arm very close to her face and makes a facial expression of fear. And you say, "Oh, the deer came running towards you, and it came that close?" And she nods. This happens similarly several times over a period of a few weeks. And one day she comes to you. She looks into your face until your eyes locked, and then you see how she opens her mouth with the underside of her tongue visible as the tip of the tongue touches the inside of the upper teeth, and then she moves her chin down and then up again at about twice the speed with which she had lowered it. And you say, "Did you see a," and you make a pause, "deer?" "Yes." And the two of you dance joyfully around a mulberry bush. Now there is another person who's blind and deaf and dumb, or rather mute. The only way to communicate is to hold him in your arms, to touch his face, him touching your mouth as you speak. And you know that he feels over the decades that you are losing your hair, that you gained weight, and that your shoulders are now bending forward. And when you cry and he touches your face, you know that he knows that you're doing the same he is doing when he is crying. And then he puts his arms around you. So we can say that each one of us carries a universe within us which no one else can touch. And we have no idea if our own inner universe shares common ground with those of others. How much of what I see and hear and fear and love coincides with what you see, fear, hear, and love. All we know is that we indeed share many things with others, and we cannot live without the things we share. We have a universe within us, and we have a universe outside of us which we share with others. There's a constant movement between inside of us and outside of us. Actually, we have a word for this movement. We call it life. Once that movement between inside of us and outside of us has stopped, we call it death. And indeed, there are many gradations between life and death, depending on the exchange between me and you, between me and them, depending on the change of me in relation to them, depending on the exchange of what is inside my skin and what is outside my skin. The mediation, the reconciliation, the war between what is inside of me and what is around me is where heaven and hell are made. This is where that is made what we named heaven and hell, or Himmel and Hölle, or Cielo and Inferno. Do heaven and hell exist if we did not have words for them? Would they disappear if we deleted the words? Does a blind and deaf and dumb person experience what we may call heaven and hell? Or pleasure and fear? Oh, certainly we all agree that pleasure and fear are experienced by all humans and by all mammals. Did you ever imagine if a fish could experience pleasure? Does biology give us an answer to this question by measuring levels of hormones or other biochemical processes in fish? Most certainly. Only that we cannot ask the fish how they deal with stress. Does a mosquito have a similar experience in its last moments, like cattle in the slaughterhouse? And all of a sudden, we are caught in the exchanges of concepts and ideas, trying to find common ground, trying to understand, mediating between what circulates inside of us and what we receive from outside of us, stuck in an abyss of wanting to be understood and being told that we don't understand, being told we are a liar, not speaking the truth, that we are dumb, limited, conceited, regressive, arrogant, schizophrenic, anal retentive, aggressive, messy, chatty, lethargic, too thin, too fat, too slow, too young, too old. Others communicate to us with endless words that we are not the way we see ourselves. And when they tell us that we are great, lovable, charming, smart, always spot on, then we suspect that they have some ulterior motive or that they are blind for who we really are. And then someone else comes and tells us we are full of ourselves or that we are humble. Who can we trust? What do we need to form the words, I believe you? And what do these words between us mean? Louis Mumford was an American historian, sociologist, philosopher of technology, a literary critic, an architectural critic, or as he put it, a writer. He used many, many words to write about what came to his mind. He was able to use so many words because he died in his 95th year in 1990. He was born, lived, and died in New York State. Louis Mumford wrote that the discriminating characteristic of humans in comparison to what we call animals was not our use of tools, but our capability to form the speech coming out of our mouth. That the thumb moved to a new position on our hands so we would have a new grasp of reality was nothing compared to the development of all those facial muscles that allow us to form the pulses coming from our throat to differentiated speech. He's not talking about our brains and all that, but about the muscles that enable speech. The most refined and complex interplay of muscles in our body is active when we form words, when we speak. Just imagine all the different sounds English, with all its dialects, uses and which its speakers can form with their vocal cord, their tongue, their head cavities, and their moving jaws. Then imagine all languages you might have heard, and the myriad of languages you have no idea existed and what they sound like. An incredible variety of sounds, some of which we as English speakers can neither differentiate with our ear, nor as a consequence form with our mouth. There are not quite 7,000 distinct languages spoken by us humans. And then for each language, there are dialects and accents. The International Phonetic Alphabet was developed to find a notation for all those different sounds. It has around 160 symbols, which is quite a large number if you consider that the symbols for writing everything our language may ever need consists of just 26 letters. And which worlds through words we can write with those 26 letters. And the 160 symbols for notating sounds of spoken words by no means mean that these symbols are capable of really notating speech. They provide an approximation for the idealized individual sounds used, leaving out intonation, the color of our voice, the speed of speech, mumbling softly or speaking aggressively, leaving out basically everything we need to grasp, to comprehend fully. And there's much more that adds to take that in what you speak to me, like the inclination of your head, the little step backward while you speak, the deep breath you take, the fist you form when you say Father, and the loud sighing of air following the last word of your sentence. When I was living in the family of my parents, we had a young woman living with us who was to give birth to what they called an illegitimate child with an, as we now say, African-American US soldier in Germany. Later she came to visit us with her baby. My mother went shopping to get some vegetables, the baby with her in a stroller. Nodding towards the baby with the brown skin, the vegetable and fruit lady asked, "Will he be able to speak German?" So we have this extremely complex process to build bridges between what is inside of us to that which is inside of others. So when we say, "I don't understand you," we say, what you are setting outside of you does not reach my inside. And in another situation, the person we talk to nods his head and mumbles, "I understand," and we know he did not understand, he did not even listen. So, how do we know if we understand or if we are understood? There's a simple test for understanding. I repeat what you just said to me with your words, with words of my choice. And if you think that what I put in my words matches what you meant, then we agree that I understood. And then you say, "Oh, it was just a joke." And then I get really mad at you. Something from within me moves to within you. Our senses allow us to communicate. I utter sounds your ears hear. I write words which your eyes read. And we agree that there's a common basis for the two of us, that the sounds we make and the letters we write are connected to meaning. And this meaning is getting its energy from how our voices go up and down and how our voices shape the sounds. So that on the one hand, you can still find the words I spoke in our common vocabulary, connected by our common grammar, and so that on the other hand, you get how I really mean it, through how I shape the words, sing them, spit them out, or accompany them with gestures. Looking at this complexity, why is anyone complaining when the path from within me to within you is always so difficult? Who told us that there is a singular and unequivocal way to move between our different universes which can never touch? I'm currently using language to talk about language. This is probably the most confusing property of us humans. We can talk about what we talk about. We can talk about how we talk. We can learn up to a certain extent other languages. We can write about writing. How Writing is Written is the title of a book by Gertrude Stein, who is commonly associated with having emptied language. A rose is a rose is a rose. And then we may discover that she actually did the opposite of emptying language, but moved the words into the eye of the hurricane of language until it conveyed a making of thinking in wording the words as writing is written. Language is never static. Language is not based on a logical system like math. A language is only alive as long as there are speakers of that language. Once the sun has set on the last living human who speaks the language natively, that language exists only as a petrified mirror. It does not change anymore. It is indeed dead. We can explore that dead language if it turned into writing, and we can learn an incredible amount about the humans who use that language and their culture. But we have absolutely no way to comprehend the subtleties of a dead language to the same degree as we use them in our everyday face-to-face communication in our native languages. A language that is alive is a constantly changing and shifting web that we weave between our inside and the inside of others. And as one among many approaches languages can facilitate, we can change the world which is exterior to us, which is between and around us. We can change the exterior world to the incredible degree as we have done over the past. We can reflect. We can throw back. We can throw back and forth words, thoughts, concepts. I can reflect on what you just said. You can reflect on what you just thought. We can talk and think about what we talk and think. We can climb ladders up above what we have done and look down and say, "Oh, that was really bad." We can jump out of our actual time and say, "I wish," and "I will." And we can ask, "Why did you do that? What were you thinking?" To climb up on such meta levels and ponder upon what we pondered upon before is the absolutely most complicated part of our human existence. No science, no engineering, no mathematics would be possible without us being able to abstract from a concrete context and to put this abstraction on a shelf from where we pull it out at a later point in time. Look at it again, develop it, change it, discard it, or move it up to yet another level. This capacity for moving between levels of looking at things, of looking at others, and of looking at us is incredibly dizzying, and it is the reason for our creativity. And it is at the same time the reason for all our despair and self-destruction. One simply not without the other. Because it is a fluid system, language, thinking, and reality are in a constant exchange. There is no one lighthouse that is the reference for right or wrong in language. Language cannot be right or wrong in an absolute sense, because absolute itself is a construct and is based on an agreement of what we mean. But interestingly enough, language allows us to negotiate what might be right or wrong. Language does not allow us to directly kill each other. On the contrary, language allows us to negotiate between either or, to negotiate between if, then. Had we not language, we would only have either or and if, then. That is why education that is based on either or and if, then is so disastrous to our human life and society. It denies the most complex capability of us humans, that is, language as a movement between us, allowing negotiation, thinking, weighing, making up our mind, making our mind. If we have no way of teaching our children how to use language, we will not allow them to bloom. The greatest shortcoming of our educational system is not the shortcomings in science, technology, engineering, and math. There would be no shortcomings in those areas if we would take language seriously in our educational effort. But language is dangerous for those who run this world because it is the foundation to think about things and not only to think things. Language enables any and everything we have accomplished. Without language, we would not have moved to where we are today. And for sure, without language, there would be no money and no science and no math and no cars and no ice cream. We would not be able to call our life human, or inhuman for that matter, had we not words. And then we have to acknowledge that other languages have other names or words for what we call words. This is again very confusing. Let me quote a source of one of the currently widest spread religions. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This sentence could mean that we are gods since we are using words. It just so happens that these two statements are deeply rooted in Greek philosophy. And even if some what we call well-educated person tells us that the translation of the original Greek word logos is not really word, I might say that the way I used word so far in my thoughts might hold all meanings of logos. This Greek word, when it and its universe of meanings was used in this text for Christianity, was moved from the Greek context into the context of the much older religion of Judaism, which in turn has roots way back in the time of the ancient Sumerians and Egyptians. And imagine this has been handed down to us over thousands of years. And I'm sitting in a coffee shop in a bookstore on Wolf Road, and this just crosses my mind as I'm writing the words for what I plan to read to you. Is this not more amazing than the invention of the nuclear bomb? So allow me to put words and language at the center of that what brought us to where we are today as humans. They allowed us to create all the benefits we are able to create for us, and they enabled the enormous destruction we are capable of. Words are the only means to organize 6 or 7 billion people, to help and to kill more efficiently, to create a better world for our children, and to not care for all those who are not our kin. That is, again, the reason for why we should insist on the best possible education in the use of words. And that is exactly why education in language is not at the forefront of our education, because language is the most powerful tool of us humans. And so it is the most dangerous tool. And I'm not talking about a multiple choice vocabulary test. I'm talking about the use of the power of words, which is the only path between my inner universe, your inner universe, and the universe we create between and among and around us. Language, thinking, and reality are much more intertwined than we allow us to understand. And the interdependency of language, thinking, and reality blows all ships out of the water. Language is the bridge between me and you that allows us to not only try to reach each other, but also to think and talk about the bridge itself. All other bridges between us do not allow us to reflect, but only to reciprocate. I can touch you, and you can in turn touch me, or not. I can see you, and you can see me, or don't want to look. I can talk to you, and you can walk away, but you can also stay, and we have an exchange which is not simply back and forth, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but a reflection. I reflect you, and you reflect me. I see myself through how you respond. I discover things through your words which I did not see before. And I can ask when I did not think I understood. We can continue to go deeper or higher, or have the pleasant or uneasy feeling of small talk, or we decide to stop speaking to each other. We talked about God and the world, about you and me. We talked through language, about language, while trying to walk across the bridge back and forth. In the first part of this reading, I tried to give a perspective on words and language as the most complex connection between inside of us and outside of us, and that language is the most powerful tool we have, and out of which every and anything comes which we create as society. In the second half of this reading, I will speak of language as the creator of past and future, and of arts as the area of the present. And please note the double meaning of present in English. So in the second half, I will speak of language as the enabler of past and future, and of art as the ever-changing present. Art is only possible because of language, and art is not identical with language. There is no art without words before and after the artwork, but the artwork is not identical with the words before and after. I'm including all arts when I say art: visual art, dance, music, and yes, also art that uses words, like poetry, plays, stories, and novels. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. The power of the word has always been acknowledged, and the power of the word to go beyond the word has always been acknowledged as well. Religion is only based on words and is to go beyond the words. Psychoanalysis is only based on that which is spoken and is to reach beyond that which is spoken, again by the power of the word. And silence is only possible through the words before and after the silence. And we can reach a state where we are not aware if we think in words, which again we can only determine once we found back to words to think about that state without words. At the core of us speaking are times past and times present and times future. One of the most interesting aspects of different languages is how each language has different inherent concepts of time, and how these aspects of time are incorporated in the grammar of a specific language. So there are not only words in the vocabulary giving an indication of time, like yesterday, right now, in 3 months, in the Ice Age, but there are very deeply rooted aspects of time at the core of grammar, at the heart of the structure with which we combine words to language. And these deeply buried concepts of time differ from language to language. For instance, one language may have 3 different ways of denoting actions which happened in the past. Or another language may not have an exact parallel to the sense of future in our mother tongue. For example, for a German mind, the concept of time that is hidden in the question, "How long have you been in the United States?" is quite complicated to learn. When you as native English speaker ask that question, "How long have you been in the United States?" you are asking, what is the duration between your arrival in the US in the past up to now, up to the present moment? This concept is hidden in have been. There is no equivalent in German grammar which references something which started in the past and which continues to extend into the present moment. In German, we do not have a clear grammatical construction to express this, but we need additional words to clarify what you are inquiring about with have been. For instance, how long are you already in Germany? And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This sentence holds the whole promise and dilemma of us humans. And as I said previously, we might be gods since we're using language. So basically we could say, "And man said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." Now our dilemma becomes immediately clear, because we can't say, "Let there be light." And the light does not go on right away, unless we speak to our phone with the appropriate app. But the thought of light, the word for light, allowed us to make light. Language allows us to create reality that is meandering between past, present, and future. Because, as you may remember, God created time by saying, "Let there be light." The previous darkness was now interrupted by daylight. The cyclical time of days and nights and years was created. Or to put it in other words, we humans observed the change of day and night and the seasons. We were not only aware of this, but we could think and talk about it. We were able to reach a meta level to time by talking about it. We can describe how our life changes over time, how the newly born grow up and the old ones move aside, or stubbornly do not move aside. We are able to set up different frameworks of time: our individual time, the time of nature, the time it takes to get something done, the time it takes me to get from A to B. We can come up with a definition of experiential time or of a time-space gravity speed continuum. We come up with myriads of concepts of time. Language not only forms how we communicate about time, but language and thinking influences how we experience time. We can change in our attitude towards times past, present, and future. And don't forget that past, present, and future are just words. So the promise of "Let there be light" is that language empowers us to communicate, collaborate, and create for a future, which is always a tad ahead of the present moment. How much the future is ahead of the present moment is a process of negotiation. Negotiation of one part of me with another part of me, like, how much longer do I want to wait for him? It is also a negotiation between you and me. When will you be done? When can we start? It is a tool of power between those in power and those who are powerless. If you don't repent, you will be killed. Or, if you are not home by 10 p.m., you will have to stay home for the rest of your vacation. Likewise, the past is a matter of definition through language. The Hudson, the first American river. How could the river just down the hill from here, how could this river be the first American river? Did it not exist a long time before America became America? This definition of the Hudson is meant to reflect feelings of the readers of the local newspaper which printed this headline. The Hudson, the first American river, is to give a sense of ownership rooted in the past and extending into the future. And then the big hammer comes down on us. How we experience the present as presence is defined by our way of thinking and talking about past and future. It has very little to do with this present moment, and yet it is absolutely only about this moment. Our language, how and what we exchange and think about the past and future, shapes the present moment and the next moment and the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. And we are incapable of defining what this moment right now means, how long it extends, when it breaks, how long it holds up. We are highly sensitive when the moment now has stopped. And we have very complicated ways of talking about this experience when we lost it, when we fall out of the moment, when I stand beside myself and observe myself as an object of past and future, as trapped between past and future. It is much easier to talk about the lost moment in terms of past or future, when the present tense is unbearable to use. We flee into past or future as meta-levels. There's a precise definition of the present moment. When we have a need and it gets fulfilled, then each now is the moment. I'm hungry, that is now. I eat, that is now. I'm full, that is now as well. Religion, psychotherapy, a sermon, soul-searching, talking with a friend, all those complicated ways of dealing with meaning and loss and joy and expectation are language-bound, even though what we say is not identical with what we mean, even though what we say is not understood the way we think we meant it, even though it is so difficult, maybe impossible, to find the moment through language. It is easy to talk about something in the past or in the future compared to speak about what is now, especially considering that only language allows us to construct times past and future, even though we can speak only in the moment we speak. There is no past and no future without language, and it seems that the present time has a hard time to stand up to past and future times, to survive the pressure from past and future, to move beyond the language, which on the one hand seems to force us to create the mess of past and future, and which on the other hand extends our life from moment to moment by allowing us to collaborate, to share, to rely on each other, to build bridges and program computers, to plan revolutions, or to retreat into silence. So, what the hell? Oh, yes, there's something I have not talked about yet. Hell. Well, there's not much to say about hell, but that it is quite an elaborate concept that can have power over us, that it is used by others to stay in power over us, or that it can be a word conveying quite well the feeling of helplessness and being without power. A word we might use to communicate the present as a continuous collision of past and future. So the present can be seen and experienced as a series of collisions, of accidents where the past runs into us like a car out of control, and the future may be like an iron cloud lowering in slow motion vertically down on us. Likewise, the future can be seen as the ray of light passing from the horizon under the dark clouds of a passing thunderstorm. And the past can give us the energy to change our course. So language is the vessel of energy that passes from the past to the future. But interestingly, energy only energizes in the very moment it moves. And then there seems to be only one channel to have an exchange with others on all this, that of language. And we found ways to not only speak, but to take language out of the act of speaking and hearing by writing it down, reading it when it is not spoken, to make language go beyond the moment of speaking and become part of the past, to be revived in the present of a future. To take notes for a future moment. To not lose the present moment and our presence in it by leaving a mark which can be revisited and which can remind us of what was. To establish our own continuity. To reassure ourselves that the moment is not transient but has a lasting value. Killing someone is simple compared to language. Killing is what we retreat to when we have lost the channel between inside me and inside you. When there's only I. And you are in the way between what I see as my past and my future. I cannot bear you. You are in the way. You are threatening me, and I feel threatened. I have no future with you, and my past asks for blood because there is no future without past. So they say. And they do say, there is no future without past by using language. So now we have art. It's just a small step from killing to art. It is the step from the annihilation of a moment to the creation of a moment. Both annihilation and creation outside of language, but both defined by what language does to us and what we do with language. I've so far used many words to say just a few things. Language allows us to move from within me to within you. Language allows us to communicate about something. Language allows even communicating about language. And language allows conceiving that which is not language. Language is what allows us to establish continuity over time. It allows us to construct past, future, and present. Actually, language has the hardest time with the present. When language is only about what is happening in this moment, it is mostly expressing things which are very direct. I like this coffee. I feel exhausted. You're stupid. Oxygen is needed to keep the whole body going. Otherwise, it is about interpreting the past. You said you loved me and you would always be there for me. Or about the future, the immediate future. Stop right now. Turn right at the next traffic light. I hope you enjoy the food. Watch the salt dissolving. And the future further away. When I'm 64, I will only listen to Beatles songs. The US plans to station more anti-ballistic missiles in Alaska. I can't wait to see the new movie. In this construction of past and future, which is deeply rooted in our present presence, language allows us to search for the meaning of life. Because language can move on meta levels, it can climb up the ladder. Because of language, we can communicate doubt and fear, and we can talk about anxiety and joy. This talk about past and future, the explanation of how we see things relating, has a direct effect on how we think, feel, communicate, and act right now in this moment. So we establish complex systems in which everything has its place assigned through language. Systems which allow us to rule the world, and systems which allow us to trust and to believe and to exploit others. Language also allows us to break with the past, to redefine the past, and to change our next steps. And this is actually the most important part of language, to break with the past, to redefine the past, and to change our next steps. And this is how we use language all the time, every day. Language is all about right and wrong. Right and wrong, not in the sense of an answer to a test or to adding up our bills, but right or wrong as the justification to do what we do, to not do what we don't do, to tell others what to do, to tell others what not to do. And all that through a highly complex web created through language and created in language, which moves from me to others and from others to me. Since we humans are totally and absolutely depending on other humans at one or most points in our life, we are absolutely bound to communication in everything we do. And however right or wrong right might be, however much we trust one right as being the right, and however much we fight the wrong, which we see as wrong, right and wrong carry our concepts of right or wrong, and thus they are the tools of power that establish the relationship between us inside our skin and all the others who are on the other side of our skin. Art, on the contrary, is never concerned about right or wrong. There is no right or wrong in the arts. A painting of a sunflower cannot be right or wrong, even if it does not look like a sunflower. A song by the Beatles could not be right or wrong, even if it was different from everything else they had done so far. A sculpture cannot be right or wrong. A dance performance cannot be right or wrong. A poem or a novel cannot be right or wrong. Oh, certainly we can and will discuss if a performance was good or bad, if an author met her own goals, if a novel is boring, amateurish, or a masterwork. We can analyze a piece of music and show why it has no relevance to us and why it should have no relevance to anyone anyhow. And we will find millions of criteria and arguments which indeed may relate to craft, history, culture, science, and experience. And indeed, we are using language to do so. We will talk before and after a movie. We discuss the concert we attended. Together with a friend, I look at a painting and we talk about it while we are looking at it. But our talk is not identical with that what we are talking about. We are using language as our means to share what we think, what comes to our mind, what we feel. We create a web, a cocoon around that, what we experience, what is evoked, what is provoked. And the meaning we exchange with words about what we see or hear is about something that we experience in the moment when we experience it. The artists have created something which most likely took much more time to create than I spend with it. Many persons have contributed to the work. The people who make the paint, the ones who harvest the hemp or cotton for the canvas, or the crew that worked on the film production. And there are always traditions a work or piece of art is rooted in. But it is merely created for the moment when I meet the work and when the work meets me. The piece is not created to establish past and future. Even though the Pope might have commissioned the painting to establish the glory of the Church, the artist made it A, to make money and support himself, and B, independent if the work will continue to exist forever or not. It is created to be present in our encounter. Actually, the piece cannot create past or future because it is not about something, but it is something. It is totally artificial, as the word art implies. But there are so many artificial things around us. We continuously create artificial things like cars, artificial strawberry flavor, or bombs. So where is art different from all those other artificial things? The difference is that an artwork is only about the moment we encounter it, we engage with it. It is made for just that moment. And we meet it in an experience where the relevance of the experience can change, where the actual experience can be different at times when we encounter the artwork again, even though we encounter the same identical artwork. That is not true for a car or strawberry flavor or a bomb. They either do the trick they were conceived for or they don't. And the trick is the same each time. A scientific experiment is not meant to be an experience, though it certainly needs observation and may be totally surprising and awe-inspiring. Neither is a paper on the structural similarities of rituals of the shamans in Mongolia and those in northern Siberia meant to be changed its meaning by rereading it again and again. It can only be invalidated as being wrong, or it gets outdated by new discoveries or questioned by different perspectives. The world of knowledge, of science or of engineering, the worlds of religion, philosophy, or mathematics are discovering or constructing continuity that projects outside of the current moment. And most certainly, we may not establish contact with an artwork which stands in a tradition and culture opaque to us. Works of art are not eternal or speak to any and everyone who gets exposed to them. And they only come to life in the moment of encounter. And what we do with them is determined as much by them, how they are, as it is determined by us, how we meet them. One not without the other. And how is great art different from mediocre or bad art? The first requirement to discuss this is that we would not mind to encounter the work at least a second time, maybe even more often. And if we see, hear, perceive, experience something new or different each time, a new aspect, a new perspective, a subtle nuance, a new thought getting evoked, well, then it can be great art for us. And if you want to find out if that is also so for others, we have to use language. We have to use past tense and future tense. We have to analyze and speculate until we encounter the work yet another time. And we don't get bored, and we did not go to it to experience exactly the same like the previous time. If something always evokes the same within us, only an analysis can help us to understand if that is part of the work in the sense of it being shallow or just a stimulus for our conditioned response, or if it is us who look only for a repetition of the previous experience we had with the same song. Certainly, language can be used for creating art, but the artwork which uses language as its material is outside of the framework of right or wrong, outside of past and future as justifying criteria. It only becomes relevant in the moment of the experience. A sculpture is not identical with the clay which was used to create it. Most certainly, the work is the way it is also because of the material it is made out of, be it language or clay. The work is the way it is because of the craft that was applied. And the work is the way it is because of the culture and the past it shares with us. And if the work did not meet the intention of an artist, we will see it right away and we say it is pretentious. And if the words in the artworks allow the depth perspective I just described, in that they allow the light of our experiencing it to reflect and diffract in different ways, if there is no end to understanding and new interest arises in the moment we meet the work again, if it does not simply pour into concrete what it speaks, and if we do not pour into concrete what we hear, then the language of the writing is there without our past and future interfering in that very moment of presence in our encounter. And that is true for all artworks. They only exist because of the words that led to the creation of the work and that reach into the future, when the work will be done. All the planning, construction, making, building, composing, choreographing, filming, which took 3 weeks, 6 months, or 8 years, result in the moment of meeting us, in all its complexity or simplicity, but meant to engage us fully beyond the making of it, beyond the material it is made out of, and beyond the language that creates past and future. And as already said, our experience may last as long as we encounter the work, but in most cases, it is much shorter than it took to bring the artwork into existence. And during that experience, time does not matter. We are not standing beside ourselves. We are not impeded by future or past. We are outside of right and wrong. And then, when we are done with it, or when it has ended, then we start to talk about it. Because again, we are bound to create past and future and continuity beyond the moment. And then we look for another encounter, possibly with the same work. And we discover a new perspective, something we have not experienced before. And this is brought to us by someone else, the artists, who condensed the time it took to make the piece into this very piece for this moment of encounter. All this condensed time is held by the piece and makes it what it is. And we spend our time to unfold aspects, perspectives, and experiences without the guilt from our past or the anxiety of our future, without the will to power or the yearning for self-destruction, both coming at the same time from past and future. The work, the piece, creates the present through its presence for us. We can deny the present or go into it, for the moment and again. All this allows us to see beyond language as a vessel of power and as a tool for survival. We can see language as the condition without which art is not possible, which is the condition for going beyond language and material, and yet exactly circling back from the beyond into the present of the piece as it is made and meets us. And we can notice that the necessity of language before and after is not identical with the present of the art. The English noun present is very nice.